think there was pressure from several sectors, so they had to hold off the retrenchment. The flashpoint here is this one. While we understand that retrenchment is a business decision, given the context that if you lay off people, they don't also have choices at this point in time. Organizations are not hiring because they're not sure of the health condition of people who might be applying. So the clash point here is this: you make a business decision, or you make humanitarian considerations. Of course, for better or for worse, the situation demands humanitarian considerations. But up to what extent will the school make humanitarian considerations? Until the school bleeds financially? Again, it's a clash point that has to be decided by the school at some point. This is when leadership will have to be decisive. Given the clash point, one will have to bite the bullet. I think the medical director of UST did that. No, sige, I'll tell people we are retrenching. Ang kanya naman is, we will continue, we cannot operate if we do not let go of people. Talking of X number of people who will be affected by retrenchment. But if we continue with this complement, the hospital will close, and then you're talking about thousands of people. So it's a difficult balancing act when you look at clash points during a crisis situation. Wait, I'll show you this short video. I hope the audio is good. Okay. I like that. It's a popular short video of, this is just a reminder to all of us, our, our ability to adapt to change. Uh, the, the situation of the frog was tragic because he felt everything was A-okay. And when he wanted to get out of that situation, it was already too late. Not because the water was hot, but because he didn't have the capacity to jump. That is an important lesson for schools when you talk about institutional resiliency. We cannot reach that point where we no longer have the capacity to adapt to change because we were too comfortable just looking at how things will move forward. May ganun kasing minsan pananaw, yung just allowing things to happen. That's one perspective. And that's common. The other one is purposively making things happen. Right? The downside of not being adaptable to change is that we normally just maintain what we have right now. We maintain the status quo. And when you ask people, why don't you want to change? The answer would always be, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Why will I change? That's correct. I mean, the perspective of it ain't broke, don't fix. That's perfectly all right. But the other side is this, it's not broke, but things can be better. Resiliency works along that side. Things can be better. We do not allow the institution to reach a point where it no longer has the capacity to adapt to changes. Right now, the important quality of a resilient organization is its ability for flexibility and adaptability. Sure, and this much, I subscribe to this also. It's good to run institutions by being too structured, right? I mean, ano yan eh, it's uniform. I mean, it's easy to lead, to manage when there is uniformity, all right? But the problem with that is, it does not also allow an institution to look at other spaces so that when this happens, then we have an alternative. Um, so just to share with you, we're trying to finalize our deployment plan, just in case we start reporting for work. So my instruction is for them to form 3 groups uh, within the office so that they would report alternately. Okay. And so then I was asked by several people, why would we divide ourselves into 3 groups? If your idea is a 50% deployment, then we could just ask people to divide themselves into 2, or just mix and match, parang ganon. And I said, let me give you this particular risk. In group 1, an employee was tested positive. All of you will be quarantined. Who will do your work? That's the reason why you have to have that kind of work arrangement. Again, that's a pathway to responding to the new normal. Okay? So this is not just about 50% reporting for work, but it is also looking at how you can ensure that operation will continue even if one will be affected by COVID-19. So you cannot not divide the workforce into groups. And now the perspective is no longer by office. If you only have limited people in the office, let's say 3 or 2, that's impossible to divide. You look at the entire institution, and you can divide employees accordingly. So that now, some people in the registrar's office might be called upon to help in the principal's office, or vice versa. That's the kind of flexibility that institutions will have to start thinking of. Hindi na pwede yung itong opisina lang titingnan ko. When you look at deployment now, it has to be in the entire institution. Okay? So, having laid down the context of resiliency, crisis management, risk management, I'd like to move forward and just discuss with you some touch points in assessing the school's capacity to respond to a crisis. If there's anyone who would like to ask questions, okay, you can do so. I just I would probably ask you What are the common risks, threats schools have identified that might affect them negatively? Um, I just listed the common risks that we schools normally would identify. These are the predictable risks: enrollment, accidents, disasters such as flooding, earthquake, etc., strikes if unionized, non-compliance with regulatory requirements, labor cases. I these are, and then complaints by students. These are predictable risks. All right. When you look at enrollment, what is the risk? The risk is that it impacts on the sustainability of the institution. Accidents would have reputational damage if the accident was because of negligence of the school, and it might have some financial implications. Disasters such as flooding, earthquake, etc., might cause the suspension of operations of the school because we did not check the integrity of our physical plant. Strikes could have reputational damage because then workers will talk about and start destroying the institution. Non-compliance with regulatory requirements, um, well, admittedly, sometimes we just get around some issues, no, in regulatory requirements. For instance, sa guidance, we know that in guidance, it's only the guidance counselors that should be doing doing counseling. But we have people who are not licensed. So what we do is we allow that person to counsel, but should be supervised by those who have license. But that essentially is not in compliance with the law, but we get around with it. And our justification has always been because there are only few who are qualified to become guidance counselors. Labor cases also is a risk, and this could also damage the reputation of the school. And then complaints by students. The common complaints of students would be, um, the teacher is not good, but the teacher is still here for the longest time. So what has happened to our evaluation of a teacher? And then eventually students would not have the trust in the school system. These are the predictable risks. And I guess all institutions have identified all of these risks. But the question is, what is our contingency plan in all of this? Because to my mind, if we have a contingency plan, we will not be doing marathon of meetings. Why? Because the moment we have a contingency plan, it's just just turning it on, and then that plan will move. But I guess, and that's my gut feel, we know what will happen if there's low enrollment, but we have not really made a plan. So that regardless of who is there, that the school will continue to operate. So as I have said, no, identification of risk is important. Estimation is necessary so that you are able to identify interventions, your response, and then you will monitor. I like this quote by Barbara Jordan. For all of its uncertainty, we cannot flee the future. And it prospects, the best way to predict the future is to create it. If you cannot flee from the future, at least this quotation tells us we have some control over the future. Because the best way to predict the future is to create it. This is essentially the core of a resiliency plan. We are in a better position to control the future of the school because we have this resiliency plan. The absence of that makes it difficult for the school to continue and sustain itself. A strategic plan does not necessarily contain a resiliency plan. Unfortunately, if you don't have a resiliency program, let's not even talk about how you will realize your strat plan. It's so simple. I build a house near the beach. Okay, I have a house, but I did not anticipate possible,
Tsunami.
what do you call that? Yung surge. Mahina pala yung pundasyon. So, just one swipe, the house is gone. I mean, that can happen to many institutions. So, I like that. Okay. I'd like to now, because now it says, if we want to if we want to predict the future, we can create the future. I'd like to focus now on estimating risks. Okay? And the basic measures would be likelihood, probability, impact, and severity. Okay. Let's just I thought I'd like to give some specific measure here so that later on you will have a guide on how to build your resiliency program. When you look at the probability level, you basically have 4 or 5, but rare would be 0, so that's negligible. So let's just work on unlikely, average, likely, and almost certain. So the criteria would be, and these are the descriptors. When the risk is almost certain, that means risk event occurs regularly, quarterly. So it's frequently recurring. Okay, it's frequently recurring. You may want to extend that and say, if in the last 5 years enrollment has been declining, then I think that is almost certain. In other words, the risk of what? Of closure is high, almost certain, because the enrollment has been declining in the last 5 years. So what do you do? What will be your response? Okay. 3 is likely. Risk event has occurred in the past year. Evidence of increased trends. Okay. So think of some risks that you run into in the last year. What was that? So if you had one, let's say, uh, let's look at um, illegal or bringing of prohibited drugs, illegal drugs in school. In the past year, you had one case, all right? So therefore, you look back and it seems to you that in the last 3 years, if I go beyond the recent year, in the last 3 years, there will always be 1 or 2 cases of students bringing drugs, marijuana, etc. So, in other words, next year this is likely to happen. So there is some sort of predictability here. The probability is average and the rating is 2 if the risk has occurred more than a year ago. Um, so these are what we call isolated incidents. Okay, they are not the norm, but see, this is possible. The probability might be average, but the severity or impact is catastrophic. Ako, I would say, yung pandemic, health crisis, yung coronavirus, I would say that's going to be, I will rate it in terms of probability 1. Because when was the last time we had the pandemic?
World War II.
Okay, but the impact of this unlikely pandemic to happen is catastrophic. I mean, it has totally changed the way things are. So these are the 4 probability levels: almost certain, likely, average, unlikely. So the figures are important, 1, 2, 3, 4, as you go through the exercise later. Now, this is just an example, and you can come up with your own. You can come up with your own figures here. In terms of impact, you may want to look at financial loss, profit reduction. You may want to see budget impact. And normally, the impact level would be insignificant, minor, moderate, major, or catastrophic. Because insignificant naman is 0, you may want to start with 1, minor, moderate, major, and catastrophic. Again, it has an assigned value. Minor is 1, moderate is 2, major is 3, catastrophic is 4. So just an example, if the financial loss is more than 100,000 up to 1 million, that's minor. If it's more than 1 million up to 10 million, that's moderate. Okay? And when it's more than 100 million, then that's catastrophic. And then you will shut down the operation of the school. And then you can look at budget impact. So you can change you can come up with your own figures, because that will be dependent on the schools. And then you can also look at the impact in terms of compliance. Okay, if there is non-compliance, the non-compliance might be minor, and so business uh, would be minimal. Okay, I'll give you an example. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you I don't know if you know this provision now. If an employee, for instance, applies for SSS disability claim during this time, and the employee is not able to get it because the school was remiss, the school will pay for the entire hospitalization of the employee. So that is one example of non-compliance with a regulatory requirement. So I would say that's going to be major. There's going to be a likelihood of serious regulatory sanctions. Okay? And then people impact. The people impact could be in terms of injury, but it could also mean laying off. That's the worst case scenario. So you may want to take a look at it. I gave you a template. You may want to work on it and see how you want to define it. May I just ask if anyone would like to ask questions or would have clarification? Is there anyone? Okay, just feel free to raise your hand because I'll be able to monitor it here. All right. Okay. Yes, Ma'am Gemma. Dali, Ma'am, ha? Okay.
Sir.
I'm just looking for Ma'am Gemma and then
Kaso, nagpapagod kami dito.
Nagbigay si Doktor.
Ito ang ginawa. Sabi ko na bindal. Ang dami natin dito pa. Mas, wala siyang pinagalang mas. Okay. Okay, sir. Ay, wala.
Isarap ko lang ang pwesta siya.
Ha?
Isarap ka siya. Pakisarap ang pwesta ng nanay lang.
Sa'yo, meron ka na. Iwanan na kita.
cannot see.
Tignan mo yung GC natin. Dinalang ko ng relief gift. Gina. Iniwan daw yata dyan sa asawa na Jude. Ano?
Ibibigay ko mo.
Bigat sa 8 kilos. Tapos marakas namin yung bigay sa akin. Hindi ko na ito sabihin.
Can I just answer first the well, this is not a concern, but asking for other examples. Sansi, could you give other examples of area elements that fall under people aside from injuries as your example? Um, Examples would be yung continued employment of the employee. For instance, what is the risk being faced now by uh, by employees of losing their job? What is the likelihood of employees losing their job? So you will be looking at different scenarios of the enrollment. So that's one. Second would be you may also want to look into what will be the new work arrangements for employees. In other words, um, in other words, you will be doing work from home. I mean, that's going to be a staple during this time, at least in the next 2 years. So that's an area element. So what are the risks involved in work from home? You will have, and the issue would be inequity because some would work more compared to others, and therefore there's going to be an issue on compensation. Okay. Yes, Miss Gemma. Miss Gemma.
Okay, hello sir.
Yeah, okay.
Okay po, naririnig na po sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, kasi po my contingency plan is since we will be doing online learning po in our school, and then I gave my non-teaching staff teaching load so that they will have something to do at home. But then I got one staff na bala ko po siyang i-terminate po because una, I don't have any work meant for her kasi po, hindi naman po siya ganun ka-skill kasi clerk po siya. Now, magkakaroon po ba to ng issue if I'm going to lay off po yung aking isang clerk? That would be my question regarding po kasi yung doon sa labor cases po doon sa predictable risks. Yun lang po, sir.
The under the law, layoff is legitimate. So there are two types of layoff. You can do a permanent layoff, and that would be in the context of retrenchment or redundancy. There is also that temporary layoff. The maximum is 6 months. So when you do temporary layoff, that means the person will not be getting any salary. However, after 6 months, he can be reinstated back to his old job. And there is no impact on his tenure. So hindi nawala yung 6 months niya sa service. The justification is clear. Walang trabaho. So, pag mga ganyan naman, and in fact, there are now legal standards that have been sent out by DOLE, what is allowable under this particular condition, and one of them is temporary layoff. You may want to take that up muna, ma'am, yung temporary layoff rather than permanent layoff. The other thing you could also do is really try to see what other, kasi yung isa rin pwede nyo i-explore, well, dapat pumayag ang mga empleyado. Kaysa naman mawalan ka ng trabaho, i-reduce lang natin yung reporting days mo. But that means reduction also in your salary.
Ah, yes. Sir, may follow-up question po ako about the reduction of salary. Can I ask po about it, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Kasi po supposed to be, if you talk about the reduction of salary, for instance, in our school, I got 3 janitors po. Since wala naman pong lilinisin kasi sarado po yung mga classroom, suppose I will be asking them to report on a certain desk. Siyempre po sir, mababawasan po yung sweldo nila. Will that be okay po?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Why do we say it's okay? Because it is commensurate to ito yung illegal, ma'am, ha? Nagtrabaho ako ng 5 araw, binayaran mo lang ako ng 3 araw. That's against the law.
Okay
Kung
po.
nagtrabaho mo ako ng 2 araw within the span of 1 week, binayaran mo ako for 2 days, that's perfectly legal.
So okay lang po 'yon.
Yes.
Kasi po yung kasi baka magkaroon po sila ng tanong na tanong na yung ano na lower yung salary nila. But the point is po nga dahil wala pong ginagawa na, and then baka po i-compare nila yung salary na receive nila before the pandemic at saka po yung salary now. So magkakaroon po talaga ng economic po yon problem pagdating po, especially kung yung pong janitor ko po ay siya lang po yung breadwinner. So eto po yung mga cases po ngayon na binibigyan ko po ng humanitarian reason, at the same time hindi naman po mahihirapan po yung school po.
Yes, ma'am. I think at this point it is important that you have a good communication plan. Ahead of time, you need to finalize what will be some of your work arrangements so that employees can prepare for the eventuality. I think one is you have to convince them that things will change. It could no longer be what we used to be doing. In fact, I will tell you, and this is the observation of many companies, those who actively work during this time, in work from home, are more or less, because if they work from home, that means that somehow the operation of the school continued. These are your essential employees, and they may be the numbers you need to run the school. So it's a perspective that you may want to take, but of course, ma'am, okay naman yung gusto niyong gawin, no? For humanitarian consideration. I think ganun lang naman talaga 'yon, no? While you are within your legal right to resort to labor saving devices, trying to keep them but with lower salaries, etc. It's a choice that they will have to make anyway. Do you want a job but given this salary or ganyan?
So
And
choice po siya.
yes, yes, ma'am.